Alright, so hey everyone, today I want to take a look at Quake 2 and its Deadzones. This is the version off the Quake 4 bonus disc on the Xbox 360. So both the movement and the camera Deadzones use about 20% square or axial Deadzones. So you have to move a little further in the corners before you start seeing movement in those directions. 20% is a pretty common Deadzone size, but it is large. You can make a decent bit of stick movement without anything occurring in-game. It's a little interesting that Quake 2's Deadzone is actually smaller and different than Quake 4's Deadzone. I'll cover that in another video. But axial Deadzones restrict diagonal movement around the axes, so I can make these bobbing motions within it, and you'll see that the camera's moving perfectly horizontally. It isn't until you break out of both axis Deadzones where you start seeing diagonal movement occur, and showing that vertically. Now, movement, of course, functions exactly the same, so I'm not going to take too much time for this. Same restricted angles as well. It's a little more difficult to tell, but you can kind of see when they begin triggering. Now, the real big issue with this port and this port's controls is the acceleration curve. So this is showing that on screen. You can see that it starts at 20% once you pass the Deadzone, and then increases linearly from then on. So this Deadzone is essentially, the acceleration curve is not being scaled to the Deadzone, and is essentially just being cut off by the Deadzone. So you actually just can't access precise speeds. So this makes making precise adjustments just feel completely awful, because you actually can't. You have to play at lower sensitivities to be able to make certain adjustments, but even then it's still 20% of the total speed you're playing at. So this makes precise adjustments just really not an option for the most part. But this also seems to apply throughout. You can see that diagonal movement begins very abruptly when it should begin more subtly. So you're actually losing angles with this method. It seems like the way they have it set up is probably more per axis, possibly, rather than magnitude, meaning like you would calculate based on the stick position from the center, whereas they're doing it from the separate X and Y positions of that position and calculating them separately. And doing that would mean that normally your stick diagonals, the diagonals in these green regions, would be inaccurate to your stick movement, because they've been scrunched, rescaled to exist here. But it's very possible that the angle that I'm inputting here, you can see how abrupt it is, this might be accurate to the actual stick angle. Whereas with a properly scaled, axial Deadzone, this would be a very subtle angle. So your angles may be accurate within these green regions, but then you lose all the angles, your stick angles, within the axial Deadzone. So that's really not good. So you lose your ability to make precise adjustments and lose a lot of angles with this implementation. And of course that cripples your accuracy towards enemies and tracking and stuff like that, and even more frivolous things like your ability to strafe jump properly, because you'll skip over precise acceleration values that you would need to properly air strafe. Of course, you can still build some speed, but it's much more difficult since you're skipping over the more ideal acceleration angles. So unfortunately, this port is actually excellent in most ways. It has long loading times, but otherwise it runs well and everything else, but it just doesn't control well, unfortunately. But that about covers things. So thanks for watching, and everyone, have a good rest of your day.